So it'll coil up the cochlea. As it goes up the cochlea, you've got three chambers to the cochlea. So you've got the scala tympani, scala vestibula, and the scala media. So the sound wave will kind of ride its way up the cochlea. As it rides its way up the cochlea, it's going to oscillate the scala vestibula and the scala tympani, which will then oscillate the middle one, which is the scala media. Inside the scala media is this thing called the spiral organ of Corti. Okay? So we got this thing here called the tectorial membrane, and then we have the auditory hairs. Okay? You guys ever seen like an Old West movie where somebody sends a telegram, right? And tap 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 tap. That's kind of what's happening inside of the spiral organ of Corti. As the fluid wave moves up the cochlea, it oscillates those three chambers. And as it oscillates those three chambers, this tectorial membrane presses down on the hairs. As the hairs are misshapen, this generates a action potential. That action potential then propagates down the cochlear branch of the vestibulocochlear nerve to the thalamus, and then from the thalamus to the auditory center in your brain. Your brain processes that as me talking. Okay? The reason why it's spiral like this is we've got different length hairs. Okay, so hairs at the bottom of the spiral organ are short and brittle, and as you get to the top, they're long and have more flexibility on them. The short ones are for high frequency, and the long ones are for lower frequencies. Okay, we're going to do a quick hearing test, and then we're going to wrap it up today. Okay, so as you get older, your ability to hear high-end frequencies starts to decline. Okay, so we're going to do a quick test here.
That's a terrible joke.
Okay, so now, so as you get older, your low end frequency starts to go out, right? So you can't hear higher and higher frequencies as you start to get older. So I'm going to start the test. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to raise your hand as soon as you start to hear the sound, and I want you to keep your hand up until the sound goes down. So I'm probably going to be the first one to drop out because I'm the oldest. And who's the youngest in the classes? How old are you? 19. Okay, so you or Lorraine should probably be the one that has your hand up the longest. Okay, so you guys actually will literally be able to hear frequencies that I literally cannot hear anymore. Okay, and then maybe possibly Natalie.
Shh.
So as soon as you guys can hear it, go ahead and put your hand up. You should be able to hear it in just a little bit. Here. It's a low-level hum. Oh, here, crickets.
Yeah, I was like, I can't tell if it's the crickets or the...
I can't hear anything right now.
Do other people hear stuff right now? It's crazy.
So as we get older.
Yeah, I did not like that. That was hurting.
So as we saw, right, so mine drops out about 12,000, 13,000. You made it 19,000. You pretty much you still had your hand up all the way at the end there, right? So as you get older, right, more and more of those hairs, right, those fine hairs break, right? So like, for example, that's why like grandma and grandpa come over for Thanksgiving, right? And grandpa's asleep on the couch. You hear this god-awful, like, high-pitched squeal coming from grandpa's hearing aid. You're like, how can grandpa not hear that, right? But grandpa literally cannot hear it, right? Because those hairs have been damaged in grandpa's ear. So as you get older, right, you lose more and more of that high-end frequency hearing.
Is it just wear and tear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there any validity to like males being able to hear different pitches versus like females?
There's slight variations in range, but it's really subtle. So yeah, the biggest sex differences comes in like, so men are far more likely to be red-green colorblind than women are. But there are slight differences in hearing between the genders, but most of it's largely age-based.
What about for color? Do women see different like colors on the spectrum, like more fine-tuned
We
versus?
believe that women are slightly better at detecting gradations of color.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So like,
They don't take nail polish.
huh?
Since they get their nails done.
Yeah, that's what we do
Well,
all the
shades of
time.
pink, yeah, right. So they're for women there's quite literally 50 shades of gray, whereas for men it's mostly like light gray, dark gray. Yeah. So there is actual data to show that women can see slightly different, but some of it we believe is also cultural in nature, right? So women are more attuned to that, we believe. Yeah. So if you ever get a hearing test, then that's one of the things that they'll test for, right? So you'll see, so as you get older, so like mine used to be like 17,000, and as I've gotten older, it's down to about 13,000. By the time I'm in my 60s, like, a lot of people in their 60s can't hear anything above about 10 or 11,000 hertz. So there's actual frequency that only young people can hear. There's been actually several like dystopian like sci-fi movies about that. Like, the only reason like the teenagers weren't like mind controlled because they're hearing frequencies and stuff like that. So all right, so that's hearing. All right. Any questions on this material, guys? Okay, yeah, so we talked about that in the video there. Okay, so let me do this real quick again. Okay, so we've got we'll talk about this more when we talk about in lecture, but so you got these three semicircles, right? So these are pitch, yaw, and roll. What's pitch, yaw, and roll, guys?
Maybe terms.
Right, so pitch, yaw, and roll, right? So those are the three dimensions of movement, okay? And then you got these things called otolith crystals, and you also got this thing called the cupula in there. We'll talk about that in greater detail when we talk about it in lecture, okay? So you're on a boat, right? You're on a cruise ship. You're sitting in your cabin, right? And you're like watching television, okay? So you've got multiple receptors in your body, right? So we've got the sensors in our ears, we've got the sensors in our eyes, we've got proprioceptors in our body, right, that tell us if we're in motion. So I'm sitting here, right, staring at the television, sitting still, right, but the ship is doing this, right? So what is my eyes telling my brain? We're stationary. What's my body telling my brain? We're stationary. What are my ears telling my brain? We're not stationary. So the brain gets really confused, and that's what causes the motion sickness. Anybody here had motion sickness before, like being on a boat, right? What do they tell you to do if you're in motion sickness? Go out onto the deck and do what? Look at the horizon. How does that help?
I thought, what about those goggles that they make you wear with the blue rings around them?
I don't know how those would work. I'm not sure how that works, but why does looking at the horizon help?
Let the fluids kind of settle down.
Well, not really, but what is now your eyes telling you? Now the eyes can see the
movement.
horizon going up and down, right? So now you're getting less of a conflicting story about what's going on with the motion. So motion sickness typically comes because certain sensors in the body are saying we're moving and other sensors are saying we're not moving, and then the brain freaks out and that's what causes the nausea, right? So some of us are, so we've got these things called otolith crystals, and we've got a cupula in there. Some of us have, so the cupula, it's almost like a gelatinous thing that moves around. So some of us have a thicker one, so it doesn't move around as much. So we're less prone to motion sickness versus some of us who are very prone to motion sickness. And it is one of those things your brain adapts to over time, so you can, if you stay on a boat long enough, you will theoretically get your sea legs. Yeah,
Could that also be like you get vertigo and stuff coming off of a boat, or like if you travel the same day?
Yeah, so you start to get what we call, if you're on a boat long enough, you get what they call land sickness.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so if you've been on a boat for a long enough period of time, you get off the boat and you still,
I've had that being at the beach all day.
yeah,
I feel like I'm on a wave.
if you're out there actually going up and down with a wave, you can feel that after a while.
So like with people who have like anxiety and they get like vertigo, have you ever heard of that?
Mhm.
Why is that?
Just cortisol level, hormone level, stress, all of that kind of stuff like that, just everything kind of just goes cockeyed for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, that's
stress and
why.
anxiety does a lot of, like, when you're, like, you get really upsetting news, like some people will vomit when they get really upsetting news, sort of a thing, yeah, so that's just your body's going into like freaking out stress mode,
Okay.
sort of stuff like that. So vertigo is, motion sickness is largely caused by conflicting sensory information. So some parts of your body saying we're stationary, other parts of the body saying we're like, so like the ones where like you spin around like this, right? So eyes and ears are telling you one thing, but the proprioceptors in your spine are telling you something different. And then, whoa, like what's going on here, right? And the body freaks out, your brain freaks out, and that's when you get sick.
Is that why, like, if you spin in one direction, if you spin the other, it kind of balances?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, like the
probably.
fluid kind of evens?
Yeah, you can even out, yeah, so it can probably even out, and so some of us are more sensitive to motion, like I'm really sensitive to motion sickness, like I can't even be in the back of like large SUVs. Yeah, like if I'm in a vehicle with people, like, God, right, people will complain about, like, look, like you can either let me right in the front or like we're cleaning up Palm at some point, so take your pick. Yeah, and some of us, like, I know people, they could be out there on the roughest seas and have a full breakfast and be good to go. So, so it's like everything else, guys, right? Almost everything's on a bell curve of distribution, right? So, right, there's some of us on this end of the spectrum and some of us on the other end of the spectrum. And anybody here not prone to motion sickness?
Just seasickness.
Yeah. Have you been out on the ocean?
Well, I haven't been, that's the one that I've been.
So,
How
like
about both?
roller coaster, sit in the back of a car and on that boat.
I love roller coasters.
Yeah, I love roller coasters. The only thing at Disneyland I won't do is the Alice in Wonderland teacup ride.
Because it's literally just this the whole time.
Yeah, I'll do all the other ones, but number one, I don't do any of the rides at the fair. I don't trust my life to, carnies. But like the tilt whirl and all new, no thank you. So.
The Gravitron? You ever done that?
Gravitron, yeah. So my mom went on that one time and with her cousin, and her cousin
Yeah, I've seen that. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
got on everybody, yeah. And then she puked, and then somebody else puked. So,
Oh no.
yeah, the Gravitron.
That's the thing.
None of those, no thank you. So, any other questions, guys?
What would be like a distinct difference between motion sickness, I guess, and vertigo?
Well, so vertigo can be caused, when you're like not even having motion. So, so sometimes like people with extreme fear of heights can experience vertigo, that sort of stuff like that. Yeah. So so we think that is more like a shock kind of a thing. So like there's a famous movie called Vertigo. It's Alfred Hitchcock movie about a San Francisco police detective who are chasing a suspect through the high rises of San Francisco, and the guy's jumping from building to building, and they're following him, and he jumps and he almost slips and falls to his death. And after that, he's got severe vertigo. Yeah. Yeah. So he goes on disability, and he's kind of a shut-in. Yeah.
That's wild.
So we think some of that is at least to some extent like fear-based. Yeah, because, you know, fear of heights is a natural phobia. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, it's, fear, you know, that lizard part of the brain taking over, it does all sorts of crazy stuff to the brain.
Wow.
Could I have
Any
you?
other questions, guys?
Can I have you go over the eye just really fast?
Yeah, I